Good morning to everyone who I have already told good morning to. Good morning twice, and good morning to those of you who are here for the first time. We're so happy to have you. If you're a repeat customer, we're very happy to have you as well. I'm Tanya Sammis. I am the co-founder of SammisOchoa and CNTRCTY, and we created this program and company in order to take powerful conversations and turn them into real action, which is exactly what you'll be hearing from Lori today. I would like to thank the Continental Residences and Sunny and her team from Kairoy and Weston Urban for hosting us today. Yes, let's give them a round of applause. This space is so beautiful. They just had their grand opening this week. They will be giving tours afterward, which she will share a little bit about. And so we're so grateful to be hosted here and to be able to be in your presence. I also would love to thank Amagi Bank, who hosted the coffee for us today and is the official banker of my whole life. It's my absolute honor to introduce our speaker today. Lori Houston is the previous Assistant City Manager. She is also now the CEO and owner of the CE Group, and she is a wonderful community leader. She's done so much to change and impact this city for the greater good. I also have the pleasure of calling her my friend, and we talked a few months ago about what she would be talking about, and I think you all will feel so enlightened to be able to hear this part of her story. I know it's not one that she shares every single day, but it's very significant and important. I'm so happy to introduce Lori Houston. Let's give it up for her.
Thank you, Tanya, and thank you, everyone, for being here. If you don't mind, I am going to sit down. And even though I'm wearing heels, I do have a back injury. I hurt my back lifting weights doing dead rows, which is so much cooler than a year ago. I hurt my back flossing with my daughter, trying to do that floss dance. And so I've made strides in how I'm getting these injuries. But thank you all for having me. I've been retired from the city since September 26th of 2025. And if you don't know much about me, I was with the city for 23 years. And I had the opportunity to work on some of the most impactful economic development projects here in downtown San Antonio and citywide. And in about 2018, when Eric Walsh became city manager, I was known for the downtown development person, which was very challenging. You're dealing with financing for project deals. And he came to me and said, I think that your passion is not so much about real estate development, but more about just dealing with complicated projects. You like that challenge. And I thought it was a compliment, but then it was like, and that's why I'm giving you homelessness. And I was like, oh. And so I became the assistant city manager over our Department of Human Services. And I immediately fell in love with the work, not expecting to become so passionate about this, but it really opened my eyes as how perfect I was to be the leader for the city, as I am an alcoholic and have been sober for 15 years. And that perspective really fed my love and my desire and my determination to really help the most vulnerable. And when I left the city, I told City Council that they would see me working on 4 projects after my city career, and that would be the Alameda Theater. I'm very passionate about getting that project done. It's on Houston Street, and it's the renovation of the historic Alameda Theater, which was the first Spanish language theater west of the Mississippi, built in 1949. The Alamo. I've been working on the Alamo since 2012, and man, I want to see that museum open. I've got some stories. The Battle of the Alamo is one story, but the battle of getting that project renovated is another story. And the fact that I stayed sober through that project is a milestone. Travis Park, another big passion of mine. It has the recipe and the neighbors to be wonderful. It just needs someone to go in and just coordinate and champion it, and I want to be that champion. And then something that I've committed to be engaged in for the rest of my life is homelessness, and working with our vulnerable populations and really spreading my truth about my story and how I feel that my story has helped grow my love and desire, but I really feel like it's a story of compassion. And something you're going to hear about my call to action, it's about compassion. So as a city executive, I traveled throughout Bexar County. You'd go to meetings and you'd hear things like, why are we helping those people? It's not my fault they can't get a job. You know, that type of rhetoric. And I realized, like, really, for someone who works for a city that's known for its compassion, there's a lot of communities or people in San Antonio that don't have it. And I want to talk a little bit more about that today. Before I go into my story, I do want to share that I am leading the task force on homelessness that is coming out of the Greater Chamber of San Antonio. And just a little bit about that work. It is something that the Greater Chamber membership has talked about for years, and that is the homeless problem we have in downtown San Antonio. And when they asked me to chair it, I agreed, as long as it was not me, Lori Houston, going to the city and telling them everything they've done wrong with homelessness. It was me, Lori Houston, going to the business community and then going to the city talking about how the business community is going to contribute and impact this issue we have and be their partner. And so that is my goal. Working at the city, I had a great opportunity to work with a team and some of our homeless service providers. The biggest portion that was lacking was the private sector. And I don't think that we had a good map of where they could plug into. And that is our goal, to really look at, you know, what are the things that we want to focus on? What are the projects that people can get behind? What is going to be the impact? So what is our short-term game and what is our long-term game? Our goal is to decrease unsheltered homeless in downtown San Antonio. That is our goal. And we are working with all the providers in San Antonio. So the city of San Antonio, their primary 4 pillars are decrease unsheltered homeless, increase affordable housing and permanent supportive housing, provide more resources for prevention, and then increase access to mental health services. That's kind of what we're doing. We're looking at all of that. Expect for the task force to come out with some recommendations on what the business community can do, most likely in October. And we will be putting money behind these recommendations. I saw a snapshot of the mayor's budget. I see Teresa with Opportunity Home in San Antonio, formerly Saha. Not the mayor's budget, the president's budget. And it was pretty frustrating because he was proposing to cut all CDBG funding, which is federal funding that the city and our homeless service providers use to help with our shelters, our homeless programs. The city uses that funding for affordable housing. I would say that the city's neighborhood services department probably spends about $20 million of that pot of money nationally on our homeless and our affordable housing services and our homeless services. They want to cut that down to zero. And then also cutting out our continuum of care model, which is close to home, which was formerly the South Alamo Regional Alliance on Homelessness, cutting out all of their funding, and they serve as the coordinator of all the homeless service providers. We have about 70 organizations that play in this space. You need a group to kind of make sure they're all talking. And if that group goes away, it's just going to cost more money to the community because there's no one holding them accountable enforcing that communication. Luckily, Congress, they're not going to let that fly. We are already working with our representatives, and I know nationally other cities are doing the same, because even though the president would like to make this a local problem, we cannot do it locally. We do not have enough resources to do it locally. And so just wanted to share that with you. But today here I'm talking about something personal to me, and that is my journey to sobriety. And I felt it was really important to share my story As I mentioned, I've been sober for about 15 years. And over the past, I would say about 15 years, but it wasn't until a year and a half ago I decided to share my story. I really felt that I was lying to you all, because I had a reputation at work as being the executive that got stuff done at the city. If you wanted something done, you went to Lori, which is an awesome reputation to have. And I hope that you all still look at me as a resource or a sounding board. To my friends, to my girlfriends, and this is my favorite descriptor, and that is Millie's mom. I have an amazing 11-year-old empathetic little girl, and she is my life. I love being called Millie's mom and not Lori Houston with the city or formerly with the city. I'm responsible for this little human, and that she's the most important thing in my life. But to me, every day I woke up and I'm an alcoholic. No one knows this. How is this going to impact me? And I was afraid to share that with you all, who some of you in this room are my friends. Some of you will be friends, or we've known each other through work, because I was afraid that you might not want to invite me to things. You may not know how to act around me. And believe it or not, I had that happen with friends. They didn't know, like, can I drink around you? Or they just wouldn't invite me because they wanted to drink, and they felt it was uncomfortable to have me there. I didn't want to be shut out for anything. And so what did I do? I hid it. I didn't say anything. And I let people who are my close friends know. And then I let the jerks who would keep saying, like, why aren't you drinking? Why are you drinking? And then finally you'd say, I'm an alcoholic, you jerk. Like, don't quit pressuring me. But that was only for a very select few that were really pressuring me. But I just didn't share it with anybody. And I felt that for me to really be free and to really be able to be the leader that I wanted to be in this community, and to be a legitimate leader of our homeless services in San Antonio, I had to share this truth. Because people were like, why is Lori Houston responsible for homelessness? She's responsible for gentrifying downtown. Like, I really had a lot of people who just couldn't see the crossroads. And so I decided that I'm going to share my truth. And, you know, beneath that, I was just like, I need to share it to everyone that I can. And so it's not just going to be, I run into people after, a few meetings, I share with them. I'm going to be proactive, because what I'm seeing in the community is that, yeah, we all need more money to solve this problem, but there is a major compassion issue in this community. And even though my dad lives in Tucson, and I was devastated by Arizona losing last weekend, but even though my dad lives in Tucson, he is my community. And my dad is one of the people who will say, why can't that person just quit drinking and getting a job? And so if my own father is saying that, who does not understand addiction, and he has someone who's lived in his house that he's raised, I can only imagine how hard it is for the general public and those that have not taken the initiative to learn more about it, how they feel. And so here I am, and I just want to share with you the thing that always I struggled with when I finally said I'm an alcoholic, and that is, I had two parents. They lived together. They're still married. I had two wonderful brothers. I had an amazing set of grandparents. I was your typical annoying, entitled teenager. I went to college, partied a lot, got a job. I have a master's degree, and then I'm like, how am I drinking every night, just going through these motions? I'm an educated woman. There's no way I can be an alcoholic. That's not for me. Alcoholics are people that don't have jobs. They're lazy. They had horrible childhoods. They have a lot of trauma. They might be vets. But me, that's not me. So it just took me a while to really understand that. And I finally had to do something about it, because I'm not joking. Like, I was drinking 4 bottles of champagne a night. That's a lot. Like, that makes me want to throw up thinking about it right now. But it is very possible to do that. But I found myself drinking that every night, and then every morning waking up saying, God, I got to cut back on drinking. And then on Monday, after you did a booze cruise, which you thought was amazing. Monday, it's the Monday morning blues, and you're like, I can't keep living like this. I'm going to quit drinking until Thursday. I would make it until Monday, and then I would start all over again. And then finally, it was in 2010, and I drank all day on a Sunday, passed out at 5 p.m., which was typical, woke up at 11 p.m., everyone in my house is asleep, and I was just so lonely. And I was just so disappointed and ashamed. And I just knew, like, I can't keep living like this. And I remember just being overcome and overwhelmed with this, like, emotion of you've got to get yourself help, and you've got to do this. And just like it's still the longest night in my life where I just couldn't wait to see the sun, because I was going to reset my life. I was going to start that day, and I was going to make changes. And I did. Like, I called my family, I called my grandmother, I called my brothers, and just said, hey, I need to say this to you, and that's, I'm an alcoholic. And I remember my grandmother saying, I'm so proud of you. And just thinking, she's like, I'm so proud of you. What do we need to do? And I remember talking to my mother, and she's like, what do you need? And I had parents that would have remortgaged or refinanced their home to send me to therapy. And I was so fortunate. I called my doctor to say, hey, Dr. Castro, instead of me telling you I drink 3 to 4 drinks a week, I actually drink 42. Should we do some testing? And so I got tested, and a couple days later, they came back, and she's like, you're very healthy. This is a wake-up call. And you know what? I was mad. I kind of wanted liver disease or something that was tangible, that I could tell Bill if he said, hey, you want to go get a drink? I'd say, you know what? I'm having some issues with my liver. I probably shouldn't drink. And Bill would be fine with that. It was like an excuse that people would understand. Because me then saying to Bill, you know what? I'm not drinking anymore. I thought Bill would think, God, you're so weak. What's wrong with you? That's what I thought. And so wanting a tangible reason to quit drinking, like, that's what I wanted. But I didn't have that, and that's when I knew, like, this is my faith and this is me. Like, if I want to get sober, this is what I need. And if you have worked with me, you know that I am very competitive. And that actually served me well, because I turned it into a game. Like, I'm going to kick wine's ass. I'm going to kick champagne's butt. I'm going to kick this. And that really, really helped me. And I was able to get my 30-day trip. I really believe that there's no coincidences. And when I was going through this, I worked for Jolynn Burley. And Jolynn and I ended up working on just downtown special projects. And there's a gentleman who was vocal about his story as well. His name is Milo Nitschke. And he was working with Jolynn. And we should never have been paired together. It was just weird. Like, it was just like, I want you to meet Milo. And I thought Milo was weird and quiet. And but he ended up taking me to my first 50 AA meetings. And I went everywhere throughout the city. But I had someone that would meet me for coffee before, tell me what to expect in the meeting, and we'd go to these meetings. So I had these people that were just like coming out of the woodwork, helping me. And he went to my first 50 AA meetings. I remember getting my first year chip and just holding on to it. And I have it in a box on my dresser that I plan on giving it to my daughter at one point. And I have all my chips, and they're just something that, just this little plastic thing, but it reminds me of my power. And I remember just thinking, like, I'm so blessed. I'm just so blessed to be able to be here. And, I want to share with you that I was really, I really was kind of guilty because my husband at the time, we both made great money. He was an attorney, owned his own business. I worked for the city. I was a rising executive. I had the city of San Antonio that Cheryl Scully, who was like, whatever you need, take the week off. Let's figure this out. We have resources. Not only do we have insurance, we've got somebody who's going to navigate you through all the resources you have. I remember that I had Milo. I had my brothers calling me all the time. It got to be annoying, but I had people that were just checking on me. And just the privilege and the advantage I had. And thinking, you know, how can the homeless be expected to do what I did, which I consider my greatest accomplishment in my life? Because of this accomplishment, I did have a child. I was smart enough to know that I couldn't have a child when I was not sober. But because of this accomplishment, I had Millie, whose middle name is Hope. And it's intentional because, like, I never want anyone, I don't want my child, I don't want your children ever to feel hopeless. Because hopeless makes me want to cry right now because I have felt hopeless. And so I just feel about, you know, I had a home. I had health insurance. I had people who drove me to my meetings. I had people who loved me enough to tell me the truth. I remember, you know, if you wanted a drink, I had a friend who said, "You're a horrible person when you're drunk." No one, you don't want to hear that from your friend, but you need to hear that. And then I was safe. I had all those things. And I mean, like I said, I had money. So having all those things, like, just think about the advantage I had. Think about a homeless person on the street who has addiction issues. I wasn't judged the way that person's judged. I mean, instead, you know, people look at homeless people on the street, they look at them with disgust. And that just makes me sick. But they do, and no one thinks about what's their story. I had food, shelter, and security. I learned quickly in my role at the city that it is so dangerous to be homeless. You don't think about it. You're like, oh, they choose to be homeless. Living underneath an interstate, you carry all of your stuff with you. Because if you leave it, someone's going to steal it or burn it. You are never safe in your life. You don't sleep. So, like, I had that safety net. I had that. Homeless people don't. I had access to treatment and counseling, and I had people who believed in me. And so, if I didn't have those things, I would not be sober. I would not be where I am today. But yet every day we expect people who are homeless, who are addicted, to do the impossible. I'll use my dad as an example, seeing the man on the corner. Why can't that man quit drinking and just get a job? And then he says on top of that, you did it, which minimizes, you know, my accomplishment. But he's 81, he's never going to understand addiction. Like, he's never been addicted. I remember him asking me, like, have you ever really been blacked out? I'm like, yeah, like, there were like 2008 and 9, I don't remember a movie I saw. I think I was blacked out the entire time. And he can't imagine that. Like, who could get so drunk they're blacked out? That's my dad, and I think there's a lot of people out there like my dad. My dad's educated, career military, but that's what he thinks. And so we expect people to overcome addiction in the absence of those services. We tell them to get a job. We tell them to make better choices. But you know what we don't do is we don't ask them, what is missing? Like, what do you need? How can I help you? Or we don't think about it. To be honest, if you were to ask a homeless person what's missing, they're probably not going to talk to you. It's going to take a couple months for them to even talk to you. But are we even thinking about, you know, what are the conditions that we need to provide them to help them even talk to us to get them help? No, we're not. And so what are they missing? They're missing compassion. I mean, too many people are homeless and addicted, and we cross the street, we see them, we look at them with disgust. We think to ourselves they should be doing things that are impossible, and we think it's that easy. They're missing housing. I find this hilarious that I had council members who would say, why don't you just take a bus and park underneath IH-37 and put all the homeless people on that bus and take them to Haven? And I would say, well, that's kidnapping. We can't do that. But I'd also say, to get someone to trust you, to even make a life decision, it's going to take you 3 months just to get them to talk to you. And so we're asking people to make life choices who don't have housing. Like, oh, do you want to get sober? You want to go to a detox center you've never been? You'll meet some people you've never talked to. And by the way, I might be the first person you've talked to in 3 months. Let's go make a life-changing decision. Not possible. They're missing the access to services. There's a lot of nonprofits that are good intention, but they're providing services that are not helpful, that do not help them. And they're missing love. Like I said, my mom would have refinanced the home to get me into one of those rehab centers. A lot of these individuals on the street have never had a healthy relationship in their life. We have an amazing outreach worker who works for Corazon Ministries who was dumped off the street when she was 15 by her dad because she was too old for them to have sex with her anymore. She lived in a cage. The safest place she ever lived up until that point was on the street. And we expect her to talk to someone after that. That's what we're dealing with. And they just don't have anybody who's believed in them, who's thought they could do this. And I am sober because people believed in me. And so I feel like compassion is the answer. And it sounds stupid when you ask, like, what is the takeaway? Have compassion. But I think about if everyone in Bexar County were to see a homeless person and think less about how horrible it is, they're ruining businesses downtown, they're ruining the community, you're a nuisance, and think more about, man, how bad did things have to be for it to get to this point? If everyone just thought that way, can you imagine how easy it would be to create policies, and instead of people coming out and saying, I don't want my tax dollars to go there, you might have a little bit more understanding of why we're spending money here. You might have people that give money, but more importantly, you might have someone who smiles at someone, and that homeless person just feels better about themselves and thinks maybe there is hope. And so I don't know the answers just yet. I am really dedicated to finding some of these answers. But if you ask me, what is the call? The call right now is compassion. And how can you all do that? I ask you to educate your friends and neighbors on my story. Educate them on the difference between their daughter or their cousin or their friend that they know who is sober versus the person they see on the street. Ask them just to think about that so they look at things differently. 70% of those that are addicted or on the street are addicted. Drugs, alcohol, or they also have a mental illness on top of that. Most likely they have a mental illness on top of that. And so that's what I'm asking, is think about my story. Think about what I had, and think about what you would do if you were in my situation, how blessed you would be. And think about that vulnerable person and just realize how blessed you are, and take the action that your heart tells you to. I'm not going to tell you not to give money to that homeless person. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. It's your compassion. You can show it in a way you want to, but I'm just asking you all to share that compassion and educate people so we are creating the narrative, and it's not the uninformed that's creating the narrative. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Lori. We'll take a couple of minutes to take questions if you have them, and then we're gathering Sunny so she can talk to you about the tours. Sure. Yeah.
All right, thank you for sharing that. What do we need more because it is working? What do we need to do better because it's kind of, and what do we need to do differently because it's not?
Yeah, I think that one thing we all need to do is we need to be on the same page. We all need to be on the same page about a plan. There are different ways that different communities address homelessness. One of the ways that I'm not supportive of, but you might have council members and policymakers supportive of, is sanctioned encampments, where we will allow a certain geographic area serve as an encampment area for homeless. I feel that's very dangerous, and I feel that by doing that, you're providing all the services that homeless individual needs at their location versus really getting them the help they need, bringing them in, getting them stable housing so they can make those decisions. So I share that because I think what we need is we all need to be on the same page about a plan and what we're doing. And that is one of the things that the Chamber of Commerce that I'm going to be leading is going to be doing, and making sure we're on the same page with Opportunity Home, Close to Home, the city, so we're all operating on those programs that we agree work. There needs to be better marketing and outreach on the issue. At any given day at Haven, there's anywhere from 300 to 400 children living on that campus. People don't know that. That's horrible. And making sure people understand, like, it's not the lazy, it's not those that don't want to have a job. These are individuals who've had trauma, and by the way, they have children. And if we can all agree on something, I think we can all agree that childhood homelessness needs to be abolished. And just making sure that we are educating people on the real issues, because I don't think people know that. They don't know that about childhood homeless. They don't know that about Haven. I don't think people know that it is less expensive for us to house someone who's chronically homeless than to service them on the street. It is about $13,000 a year to get somebody into a permanent supportive housing, if we have a voucher from Teresa. But it's $13,000 a year. It costs about $17,000 in public dollars to service that individual on the street. It's a financial proposition. That makes sense. The city of San Antonio last year spent $21 million in fire and police response to the homeless. Why is that? Because the homeless use 911 as their medical service provider. They don't have a regular doctor. And there was a well-intentioned program that was, we will give free Uber rides to any homeless person that needs to get their prescriptions refilled, go to their doctor appointment. Uber drivers are not going to take a homeless person in their car with all their stuff. They're not going to do it. And so what did the homeless do? They call 911. And they're hoping that they will get a ride to a doctor appointment or go get pharmacy prescriptions refilled. Or they're sick and they don't have anywhere to go. And so they call 911. $21 million, guys. And that is general fund dollars. That's what services, funds our police and fire. And so if we can all wrap our arms around a strategy with the compassion I'm talking about, we can really, really make a difference. Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that you want to educate people because you don't want the to have a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share some things like very high level myths that aren't being shared
Oh, yeah.
about homelessness that we can, even combat and
Yeah.
walk out of this room?
Homeless providers throughout the United States are not sending their homeless to San Antonio to move to Haven for Hope. That is something that I hear all the time, that the people that live in Haven aren't even from Texas. They're coming from other places because the cities are dumping their homeless here. Not true. That is a big myth. that we are constantly trying to fight locally. I also feel that, it goes back to the uninformed, people, I hate saying people, but vouchers at Opportunity Home. The Opportunity Home gets housing vouchers to help individuals who are, who do not make the income they need to support housing. But Opportunity Home can't tell them where to live. They can give them the voucher, and then that person is supposed to go and find housing. I'm a mom with one kid. You give me a place, when am I going to find time to go find housing? I figure it out. But these individuals who have 2 or 3 jobs, they have 3 kids, how do we expect them to go find housing? And so there's a need for, when we hear people, they can't find a place to live. Well, sometimes it's because they just don't know where to start. They don't have the resources. And as I mentioned in my journey, if I didn't have that gentleman, Milo, taking me to the meeting, probably wouldn't be sober today. And so, some of the things that I'm thinking about is, we need someone that Teresa can call and say, a mom doesn't have transportation. She really needs help finding housing. Can you sit down with her for an hour, navigate her through the process, and narrow down her options? That's huge. It costs money, but it's huge. But just think about that. I mean, it's a no-brainer. You're working 3 jobs, you have 3 kids, you don't have a car. When are you going to find time to go find housing? And so I think a lot of the solutions, it's just common sense. And then it is money. I'm not going to lie. It's money. But hopefully with the investment, it becomes less and less expensive, in the long term. Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you all so much.
Thanks again, Lori, and thank y'all for being here. I will, thank my team, Bianca, Sophia, Avery, Jules, and Marlene, for doing what they did and putting this together. Also want to mention, if you hop to CNTRCTY, you can see our next event, which will be on May 20th, and we're talking about advanced manufacturing in partnership with TechBlock.